What would you do if you had the chance to show kindness to someone who had already suffered enough in life? Most people might look away, or pretend not to notice. But one man, a single dad, a quiet veteran living in the woods, made a decision on a flight that not only changed a stranger's life, but turned his own world upside down. The very next day, the sound of helicopter blades shook the stillness of his cabin, and what happened after left his daughter in tears of pride. This is a story of sacrifice, humility, and the kind of honor you can't fake. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see why one small act of compassion carried more power than medals or money ever could. Daniel Brooks had long stopped expecting life to be easy. A Marine veteran, he carried scars on his back that no one could see. Scars of battles fought overseas, and scars of coming home to raise his little girl, Emily, after his wife passed away. Life in their small mountain cabin was quiet, sometimes painfully so. But Daniel believed it was the safest place for Emily to grow. That morning, Daniel boarded a flight from Dallas to Washington, D.C. He'd saved for months to afford the ticket. First class, a rare luxury, meant to give him some dignity on a long journey to meet an old comrade. He wasn't used to comfort. But as he sank into the wide leather seat, for once, he felt like life was giving him something back. Just before takeoff, he noticed her. A woman walking down the aisle, her head low, wearing a scarf that covered most of her face. People's eyes followed her, some with pity, others with discomfort. When the scarf shifted, Daniel saw the burns. Her skin told the story of fire, of tragedy survived but at a cost. The woman clutched her boarding pass and moved toward economy, clearly trying to disappear into the crowd. Daniel's chest tightened. He remembered the wounded soldiers he had carried off battlefields. Men and women who tried to hide their pain behind silence. He looked at his first-class seat, then at her. Without hesitation, he stood. "Ma'am," he said softly, stopping her before she reached the back. "Take my seat. Please." Her eyes widened beneath the scarf. I can't." "You can," Daniel replied firmly. "And you will." The flight attendant looked confused at first, then nodded in quiet respect. Daniel carried his small bag, and moved to the cramped seat in the back, where knees pressed against the seat in front of him, and the air was warm and stale. But Daniel didn't mind. From across the cabin, he caught a glimpse of the woman finally sitting with a bit of space, a bit of dignity. When they landed, she tried to find him, tears in her eyes, but Daniel had already disappeared into the crowd. For him, it wasn't about thanks. It was about doing what felt right. That night, back at his cabin in the woods, Daniel cooked dinner for Emily. Macaroni and cheese, her favorite. She laughed, telling him about her school project. And he listened like it was the only sound that mattered in the world. The sacrifice he made that day didn't cross his mind again. To him, it was just a seat. But the world had been watching. The next morning, Daniel was chopping firewood behind the cabin when he heard it. The low thundering hum that grew louder, rattling the windows. He looked up to see a helicopter circling above, its massive body painted green and white. The words hit him like a punch. "United States Marine 1. Daddy." Emily shouted from the porch, her small hands covering her ears. "What's happening?" The helicopter descended onto the clearing near their cabin. Grass and leaves whipping in every direction. Soldiers in crisp uniforms stepped out, forming a line. Daniel froze, his instincts pulling him back to military discipline, though he hadn't worn the uniform in years. Then, from the cabin doorway, Emily whispered in awe, "Daddy, that's the President." The President of the United States, surrounded by Secret Service, walked toward Daniel with a steady, deliberate step. He extended his hand. "Mr. Brooks," he said, his voice firm but warm. "I came to thank you personally." Daniel blinked, unsure if this was a dream. "Sir, I don't understand." The President smiled gently. "Yesterday, on that flight, you gave up your first-class seat to a woman who's been through more than most of us can imagine. She's one of our own. An Army medic who was severely injured while saving others during a field explosion overseas. She thought she'd been forgotten. But you reminded her, and the world, that her life still carries dignity. That act of compassion reached further than you know. Daniel stood frozen, his calloused hands gripping the axe handle. The president put a hand on his shoulder. The country owes you more than words. But today, we wanted to say them in person. Emily's eyes glistened, her little chest rising with pride. My daddy's a hero, she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Daniel's throat tightened, his eyes burning. He wasn't a man of speeches. Never had been. Sir, he finally managed. I just gave up a seat. The president shook his head. No. You gave someone back her dignity. And that, Mr. Brooks, is the highest form of service. As Marine One lifted off again, Daniel wrapped his arms around Emily. He wasn't thinking about glory or recognition. He was thinking about how his daughter had looked at him. With pride, with love. With the kind of faith that made every sacrifice worth it. In the silence of the woods, Daniel realized something: true heroism isn't about battles or medals. It's about the choices we make when no one is watching. Until, one day, the whole world does. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness carries the weight of a lifetime of honor. Daniel Brooks didn't give up a seat. He gave back hope. And in doing so, he showed his daughter, and the world, that the heart of a hero beats strongest in the quietest places.